Welcome to the Energy and Society series. Today we have presenting Dr. Andrew Wallace of the Earth Organization for Sustainability. It sounds very comprehensive, but it has a decentralized structure.
Yeah.
So Andrew was the executive director of that. He's still involved, which is why he's speaking on it. He was originally Britain, but is now based in Umeå, Sweden. He has a PhD in robotics and AI. He's worked as a software engineer in projects from submarines to robots, to telecommunications, to AI, and he is a former lecturer at Chalmers University. He is now presently doing analysis of telecom networks. So if it's technical, he's been in just about all of it.
Yeah.
Okay, without further ado, Andrew.
Thank you. So we're going to whiz through EOS and EOS ideas and stuff. So core ideas. What we think about the basic ideas of what we're going to do. So we're going to start with those. We're going to talk a little bit of complexity because I'm actually going to go through the whole package as it were, but I'm going to whiz through it because I think it sort of doesn't really make sense if you don't have the whole lot. So we're going to start with complexity because that sort of justifies a lot of our things we're going to do, especially this sort of split that we make in society. So I'm going to talk about the technology side of society. And within that context, we're going to talk about resource allocation. And then we're going to have a look at expert management of how we plan a future society could actually sort of work. The other split we make with society is we look at a people side as well. So I'll mention some things about that. Then I'm going to do a bit of a summary of design of what we've been working on. And then last two bits, we're going to look at firstly is what have we actually done and what have we actually learned. So here we go. We'll start with the core ideas. We're going to take we try to take a scientific approach to this as much as we can. So we see this as an application of science. How well we're doing that could be debatable, but that's the aim. We're trying to do that. We're proposing a future socioeconomic system that is what we consider to be authoritative, not authoritarian. Difference between authoritative and authoritarian has been that if authoritative, he says, like, do what I say because I know what I'm talking about, rather than do what I'm saying because I'm in charge. So that's the approach we're trying to take. It's goal orientated. So we have a goal that we're working towards. So everything should actually work towards that goal and fit together for that. Following on from the application of science, we try to keep this as open as possible. So everything gets published open and everything's open for criticism. That's like if you think about a peer review sort of thing. So that sort of process is behind that. Key thing in our design that keeps cropping up is the idea of balance. If we want to build a future sustainable society, we have to balance our needs with nature and stuff. So the balance comes up a lot in our design. And again, following on from the idea that this is supposed to be a sustainable society, we want to have things to be multi-use as possible. And we also talk a lot about load factor. So we want to actually maximize the use of things that we have actually produced, and rather having like cars at the moment sit around most of the time doing nothing. We want to actually try and keep the system running like, say, 80%. So to maximize the use of it, and now 20% for a buffer. So first thing there, then we make a demarcation between the people side and the technology side. We see society as being very complicated, and most of the complications, part of it is all lies in the technology we have and how we use that. So we have this sort of split, but it's nicely logically split. But of course, the two things overlap because people who work on the technology side are also the same people who live in the people side as well. So there's a big overlap, but we make that logical split. For the people side, we propose a system of direct democracy, but the people side look after people issues, but the technology side is run differently. And for that, we propose a system that we have expert management. And that follows from the complexity of society as well. It's a moneyless system we propose. So it's things like, it's sort of like a Star Trek economics, if you want to think of it that way. We want to build the society up around holons, so take a holonic structure. We'll look a bit more about that if you're not familiar with those later. And environmental design, because it's supposed to be sustainable. So there's one aspect of it out there, but we also try and build up an environment where people's behavior is in the sort of right way, as it were, for a sustainable society through building up the environment for that, so rather than trying to force people into behaving the right way through laws and prisons and things like that. So we'd like to try and do it that way if at all possible. Right, so that's overview of the core ideas. Complexity, this is where it all starts. So we are taking the view that society is highly complex. A modern technological society like we have today is very complex. It takes many years just to learn part of it, and nobody really knows how the whole thing works either. It's composed of systems within systems. So we have things like transport systems and healthcare systems and electrical systems and all these type of systems, production systems, whatever, all working within it, with factories within systems having there and everything. So there's a whole network of systems within systems. So this is the view we take on society. And from that complexity, we decide that the way to start dealing with it is to split it in two. We've got the people side of things. We can deal with things like morals and ethics and how culture and stuff like that. But we also have the technology side. So we're looking at electrical systems, how you do deliver power to cities or whatever. You've got transport systems, you've got production systems, farming systems, health systems, all these systems take a long time to actually learn. And someone could be an expert and knowledgeable in one of those systems, but they're not really expert and knowledgeable in everything. So we make that sort of split. I said that this is going to be one of the principal ideas was it was going to be goal orientated. So that is the goal. We're trying to find the high standard of living. So we want to try and use the technology we can to try and make the best possible living for everybody we can. But we also have this little bit, the longest time possible, which means the whole thing has to be sustainable as well. And this is also one of the balancing ideas. We've got to balance what people need and lifestyles and people would like and everything with what actually the planet can provide as well. So we have the balancing bit built into the goal as well. But everything we should do should be some way a sub-goal that should lead to this higher goal. So that's the whole design process leads back to that. To handle the complexity, we propose a holonic system. And holons you can think of as a part-whole structure. It in itself is an entity in its own right, and it's sort of, but it's also composed of other entities that make it up, and it composes other entities as well. You can think probably maybe an easy example would be to look at a cell in somebody's body. It's in itself is an entity you study. You can study a cell by itself, but it's composed of other things. It's like organelles and nucleus and whatever in there. Mitochondria, DNA and things. So it's also composed of parts there, but it's also makes something else, which would be like organs, and they make people as well. So we have that sort of, it's not quite a hierarchy, but it's things within things within things. It's a sort of divide and conquer approach to handling the complexity. And it's also flexible. It's a distributed system, interconnected networks as well, I think. So that's the type of approach we're taking as well for the design of the social economic system that we propose. On the technology side, when we make that split there, we propose a system where experts are managing things. So you would have experts in electrical systems, experts in production, experts in farming, or wherever. They will be making the systems, making the decisions for those systems, how they should be used, what we should be using for, what we should produce, and then that goes back into society. These experts, we sort of propose actually sort of multiple teams of things, but because we have this idea that experts should be ruling things, this makes this whole idea a type of technocracy, rule of the skill sort of thing. They should be working in teams. We don't envision one person knows everything, or even if they're experts in the thing, in their subject area, everything interconnects. So they need teams to work together, multi-skilled teams. So drawn a little pretty picture there. So all those little happy smiley faces should actually be sort of experts, and they could be working together on their particular project, which may be like, say, dealing with roads in a town, for example. They could be working on that, but they'll also be connected up with other towns who could be working on their projects as well to do with their roads. And then, of course, you might need, say, roads in between, so they could be joining together to make those sort of connections as well. So you have this sort of layers within layers of building networks up and connections like that. So holonic system like that is a basic idea. Resource allocation, one of the most important parts of the whole system. if you're going to actually do anything in society, we propose a system that doesn't use money. So there must be some other way of actually allocating resources within the system. So we propose a system that's based on energy, materials, and we want to know things like how much do we have and how much can we allocate for different projects. So we propose a system that's based around the use of exergy, exergy being the usable energy. So it's not so much how much energy do we have, but it's more important to know how much energy can we actually use, how much can we actually allocate to different things. It turns out that if we do an exergy, materials also have exergy as well. So we can actually have an accounting system here where we can actually account for materials and energy to be used in a system using the same concept of exergy. How well that will work, I do not know. This is one of the things we really need to test out, which we'd like to do. But that's the basic idea there. When we use the exergy there, we then define the production capacity of a system, or the production capacity of a social economic system there. And then we can allocate that to projects and to people. So production capacity then is defined in the terms of exergy. The exergy then gets allocated to technique projects and to individual allocation. Now, technique there is a term we use for the state, as it were, that uses this ideas of technical skill management of the technical side of things. That's the term we use for that sort of type of state. So we have the general technique projects, and we also have individual allocation of projects as well. We tend to work out what our production rate is or production capacity is on an accounting period, which was by default at the moment is a year. So we say how much can we produce or what production capacity we have for that year, then allocate that year's worth of production capacity out to people and out to state-run projects. But that production capacity then can't be carried over to the following year, so we can't save anything. If you've got a capability to produce 100 items this year but only produced 80, then we can't produce an extra 20 next year. We still have the capacity to produce only 100. I say a year for this accountancy period, but we also toyed with the ideas of perhaps having a dynamic system. I'm not quite sure how that will work, but we've got those ideas as well. The whole system isn't so much a command economy, where it's all centralized control, but it's also not a free market system either. But we have what is somewhere in between. It's like a demand-driven but managed system. So we have the experts managing it, but the people are still making the demands of what actually gets produced because they allocate the production capacity. So I put together a silly little example just to sort of try and illustrate some of the ideas, but it's a very simple one. Production capacity, say we have 2,000 energy units, we can produce that, and we decide to allocate it 50-50. So we have technique projects, whatever the technique needs to produce to keep itself going. And we put individual uses there. So we have 1,000 energy units for individuals. So individuals can have 10 energy units each, and then the individuals can then decide what they actually allocate to. So we looked at it and see what they do, and we find that perhaps we could put maybe 800 energy units is what's needed to run some projects for the technique, and the users actually by the end of the year end up allocating all 1,000 of their units. So we run up not using the full lot of energy units there. So we still got a couple hundred left. So this is we should have a buffer capacity. We do aim for say running at 80% for the system. So that's the load factor on the thing. So this one has shot over that capacity a bit, which is also what the buffer's for. So if we have problems or unpredictable bits in the demand, we have a buffer capacity that can cope with that. So that's what the idea of this is. But we shouldn't hit 100% is the idea to avoid, but we try to aim around about 80%. I've drawn a nice pretty picture now. So we've got something that sort of illustrates the whole basic idea. This is still very top level ideas, top level design bits. But we have material sources and energy sources coming in. We have the expert managers in between. The expert managers will then manage and control things like the energy production and the production of goods, so farming, factories, whatever. They'll be controlling that. They're also allocating the energy credits or the energy units out for the households, for the individuals, so that they could then allocate how they want to. So the energy credits then goes to production and the goods goes to the household. So that's a sort of summary of the basic ideas then. But I've got another little pretty picture as well coming up now. Looking a bit more from the energy side of things, we've got some sort of energy reserve. So we've got energy production coming in there that creates the energy that we need for society to run. Some of that is then dished out for running things, to obtain raw materials for productions, for recycling or whatever. So that becomes necessary energy expenditure. And then we have some energy also goes into research, development stuff. So that's sort of future developments of the whole technique as well. So that becomes, those two together generally considered to be necessary energy expenditure. Then we have energy that is used as allocated by the user, which is allocated for production, and that produces the goods, which would be L in there. But we also have this buffer as well, buffer zone. So we're supposed to, again, coming into this idea that we try to run the system at 80%. So we have some buffer as well, just in case things go over. We have some unpredictable demand or something happens. So we've got some buffer to the capacity to cope with that, but we should not get to 100%. And there's the goods coming back. So we've got L is the goods. So the user allocates the energy and they receive the goods back. I said the whole idea is supposed to be holonic. So we've got systems within systems and stuff, but we do actually have a hierarchical structure as well, which is based around geography, which is this one. And the idea of this one is to link together experts within a specific field. And this is for, it's like a professional society or some sort. It's for defining the standards and defining what actually is an expert in a particular area. So we have a hierarchical system like that for that. It's geographical, but we're also thinking about possibilities having something that could be virtual as well. But we still try to think of systems on a geographical level because the resources are geographical. So we have things like groups would be the smallest geographical areas, and you could work up to zones and areas and sectors, getting larger and larger geographical things, until you come up with what we got here is a sequence, often sequence of research, sequence of production, that sort of stuff, which would be the higher level professional organization for running that area or defining the standards, etc., within those sort of technical fields. The expert management. We behind the scenes to running the whole thing. The idea here is that we want to try and to minimize the amount of work. So we cut back on how much work people actually do. One thing of that is we will have automation as much as possible, try and automate things as much as things out as possible. But that doesn't mean to say there's no work for humans to do. But we hopefully we minimize it so there'll be so little work for there. So maybe people will have maybe 2 years, 10 years working, and they will get the same energy credits whether they're working or not. So we want to try and cut back on people's working there. We also, of course, experts behind the scenes are going to be humans, but we also want to maximize technology as much as we can. So we're still going to have AI. We want to use AI to predict things, to run things and stuff as well. So again, that also comes in with the idea of automation too. All right, and then we go on to the people side. And the people side is still the same people actually working things. So even though we make this logical split, we still have, they're still interconnected as things. So people there, we want to build around communities. Again, this is following a sort of holonic theme. We have communities, maybe say 200 people. This is where people live, this is where they work, and this community itself should be a self-sufficient building block. So it should be something that can take care of its own energy, its own waste, and produce the basic foods that the society that community needs. But it shouldn't be isolated. It should be connected up with other ones, other communities, forming connections and networks and stuff. So, but this is sort of basic idea of what's happening inside a community, and it's also illustrates how the technology side and the people side is interconnected, because we've got the people living in the communities, but they also working in the communities. So you have something like this, maybe you've got an agricultural group and a building group, so they'll people be working with those things. They look after the production of food, another group will look after the buildings, but they're still interconnected for a network. And then these ones will then build up a community, then connect up with other communities to form higher levels in the holons or hierarchy, as it were. So we build up networks of these communities, and these networks will then add extra capacity, produce extra things and stuff working together. When you get up to say, so our community say we'll put about 200 people, but if you get up to about 10,000 people, we'll have that all together on block. We call that an urbanate. So it's building up a town basically in that sort of connection there. So got another pretty picture. We've got 3 communities here. So each of those 3 communities will be self-sustaining, but they will be producing their own food, their own energy, but they also have some extra capacity. So we've got like community A here is producing extra energy that's used by community C. Community C would use that extra energy to produce clothes. Those clothes will then go into community A and community B. Community B, on the other hand, is also producing extra food, and that food will go to community A and community C as well. But obviously, they don't need any extra energy for that. But those are 3 communities cooperating and working together. And those communities will then you have more communities, groups of communities all working together, and again, taking a holonic sort of approach to it. So you have something like this, maybe, where you would have maybe community A in one of these tower blocks, community B in another tower block, and community C in another tower block. This also illustrates another sort of basic idea. We want things to go vertical as much as possible because we want to minimize our actual impact on the earth. So instead of building cities like spreading mold all over the place, they're actually building vertically up and trying to keep as much of the natural service to nature as possible. Another thing to say about all this, when you all link them all up, they can then link up again into what we call legislative council. These legislative councils will handle the laws and cultures and traditions or whatever for a particular group. And this is non-nation centric, but it's based around culture and language. So it doesn't matter where these communities are, they can still link up with a particular legislative council, have their particular laws and culture for that particular community. An example would be I'm living in Sweden at the moment. In Sweden, it's Swedish. Everybody speaks Swedish, but over the road or over the water, actually, in Finland, they have Swedish communities there that also speak Swedish, but they're not in Sweden. They come under Finland. But in this system, they could link together with Sweden or Swedish communities and have Swedish laws and Swedish customs, even if they're actually in Finland, because we're not following the national boundaries and stuff. So. Okay, and quick summary of the design. Some ideas, we try to follow best practices as much as we possibly can, however they're defined. They're going to be defined by the experts, but the ideas at the moment we've got for best practices is, first of all, is modularization. It comes into the idea of reuse, so we're reusing designs and things, building modules and connecting things together. We want to minimize production of things. So what we do produce, we want to try and use multiple ways, so as get a maximum amount of use out of them as possible. Everything we do should be sustainable. So the whole of society should be a sustainable society, and that follows directly from the goal. So that's inbuilt into this from the very beginning. Then we've got ideas for architecture. The things should be circular based. The idea there is to try and minimize material for the maximum volume that we can get. So we tend to like things like geodesic domes and circular structures, but not necessarily so. Polycultural, we want it to be as diverse as possible. There are limits to how diverse we can get, but diversity is the important part of it. We want different cultures and different languages and things like that. It's not just one universal culture to be put into it. Social engineering through environmental design, we would like to try and get a design so that people would naturally tend towards desirable behaviors, for want of a better expression, through building environments for us. So it was naturally sustainable, and people would do naturally sustainable things through those environments. How we can do that is a thing to look at. Vertical, as I said, we want to try and minimize our impact on the actual Earth. So instead of building cities spreading out, we want to build cities going vertically up. This also comes with the polycultural bit, that we have local characteristics, local adaptations, local cultures and things. So it could be multiple different communities can have different cultures and different ways of doing things, as long as within a certain bounds. You can't tolerate everything, but we want to tolerate as much as we can and be as liberal as we can. So that's the basic ideas there. Talking about what have we done, we've actually been around since 2004. So we've been trying to do things, and the main thing we started off doing in the beginning was publishing our things. The design is what I've roughly been going through here. I'm really whizzing through everything at the moment, but the design is the written down of everything, our ideas, and that is available on the internet. So you can get there. We also have published some books about these ideas, which are at least one of them's on Lulu, and one of them's on Amazon, which you can get. It also explains the ideas as well. We've given lectures. Most of the lectures we've given have been at Umeå University, but we have been given presentations and stuff like that. But our biggest one we did was 2010, which was, well, it wasn't a lecture we did for ourselves, but it was a big lecture we organized, which was for the Venus Project in Stockholm, with Jack Fresco there in the middle and Roxanne Meadows. So they came to Sweden in 2010. We organized that one, and that was the biggest one we did. I think that was about 380 or 88, something around there. People came to it. Normally we get about 20 odd to our lectures, but that was the biggest one we did. Biodome sneaked in there already. There's no point in just sitting and talking about things and writing things on the internet. I think if we want this sort of a future sustainable, moneyless, Star Trek-like society in the future, we've got to be proactively building it. So we actually want to try and actually build things in the real world to try and build this sort of future society up. So this is one of the things we started building, which is the Biodome. We built that in Umeå, and that's what it looks like. It's only a small thing at the moment, but it's in use. It's in use as part of an urban farming project. So they use it as a greenhouse and they grow things in it, and it's working quite successfully. We also, again, try and actually build something in the real world. We've got a community on the way. I don't actually know much about this community because most of the meetings have been in real life, and because of the COVID-19 thing, I've been avoiding people even more than I would normally do, and which is probably for best. Actually, I'm not really a people person anyway, but so I haven't followed exactly details of what's going on here, but we do have some land, we do have some access to the land. The idea is that we should end up owning it later, but at the moment we don't own it, and EOS in Umeå have been sitting around and having real life meetings and trying to sort out the design of it, how it will work, and that sort of thing. So they built a model, and there's a picture of the model they've been building. I noticed that they haven't really gone for the circular bit of the architecture, but they have gone for the modular bits. So that's it. So they've been working on that. The community is called Elysium, and it is at a place outside of a town to the north of us called Skellefteå. Skellefteå, yep, I got that right pronounced. That's to the north of us. So we have access to land. So we're working on that as a community there. What have we learned? We need money. One of the most awkward things going, because for an organization what's a moneyless future society, to have to rely on money seems to be sort of awkward, but and yeah, that's the reality of the situation. We need money. The Biodome there was actually built with EU money, so the EU funded that one, so we do need still money, so somehow we have to get money. So we have membership fees, for example, to get money in is one way of doing things. We need people. We've been around since 2004, but we're still relatively a small group. We have had activity in other nations as well, but again, it's small and it's trying to keep things going. We would like to have more and more people in, but some reason this seems to be a very difficult ideology to understand. People come to us to think we're going to be either a fascist organization or we're going to be a revolutionary organization that's going to overthrow the evil imperialistic capitalist system or whatever, which we're not either of those. So, but trying to understand what we're trying to do seems to be very difficult. So trying to get people in is quite difficult. But Enrique seems to be very good at that. Enrique's one of Enrique was the director who came after me. So, but he seems to be much more better on people than I am. Things are slow. Sometimes it feels like we've been sitting here doing things for years and nothing's actually happened. But when you actually look back, we actually have done something. We have actually achieved things. But given the rate of we're busy destroying this planet, we really need to be a lot faster, I think, to be able to build things, test things, and get things working and stuff. So, but it is slow. It's frustratingly slow. The other thing we learned is cooperation isn't easy. We've tried with cooperating with other groups, but we run into the sort of thing that, yeah, how can we cooperate with you if you don't do what we tell you? We run into problems like that. We've had groups very dictatorial of what we can and cannot do for them to cooperate with us. So it's been very difficult getting cooperation working. The biodome we built was actually a cooperative project with another group called Green Free Will. And that's a good example of cooperation, I think, because we don't agree with everything they stand for, and they don't agree with everything we stand for, but we do have a lot of commonalities. So we use that commonalities to work on building the biodome. It means we don't have to agree 100% with each other, but we can still work together. But we do have cooperation going. We've had active groups in like Slovenia and stuff before, but these groups are sort of come and gone. At the moment, we've got one, Cascadia, which was something new. I found out about this for this presentation, actually, which is apparently is part of America up in Northwest, I think, Northwest and up into Canada. So there's an American group there. They actually seem to be quite active still. We've got a group in UK, Ireland, who are, during this pandemic, have died down a bit. Hopefully we can resurrect them. But those are the groups we've got going at the moment for us. So that was a quick whiz through. I hope it was some degree understandable. There we go. So questions?
With the community you are trying to build, are you trying to build it in a remote location or in a more urban location?
Depends how you want to define remote, because this is in the far north of Sweden, which many people would consider the remote to start with. But it's built outside of a town, still within travel distance to the town. I would say it's remote, even in that context. Oh yeah, so it's remote, but it's not that remote that it's far from civilization. It's still within travel distance to the nearest town.
Okay, thank you.
I had a little bit of a question, and I hope it's not too far off your subject, but you did mention the Venus Project and Jacques Fresco. Now, I think he died a few years ago.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So what happened with the Venus Project?
They're still going. Roxanne Meadows is still running it, so it's still in the same state as it was before.
Okay.
As far as I know, I haven't seen anything otherwise.
Gotcha. Okay. Maybe you kind of alluded to like this thing about some of the difficulties of cooperating with different groups. Maybe, kind of with regard to the Venus Project, where would you see like some of the differences between your group and them?
We were actually actively involved in the Venus Project, as far as we can get actively involved in the Venus Project. Before Zeitgeist came out, we were on their forums discussing things there and everything. So, and then Zeitgeist came out and it suddenly became very big. But we tried working with them, and we talked to Jack Fresco about cooperating and things. But Jack Fresco was very much on the lines of, we can cooperate as long as you do as I tell you to.
Okay.
And that didn't work, but they wanted to keep everything commercial and secret and stuff as well. So you had to sign these non-disclosure agreements and everything, but we have this idea that we want everything to be open as much as we can. So we clashed there. So we ended up not being able to really cooperate, but we still support the Venus Project. And that's why we organized the Venus Project in Stockholm talk as well. So we do promote the idea of Venus Project as well. So we're sort of doing that as well, but we would have liked to have had better cooperation.
Okay.
Yeah. But is this really the commercial, that they're still keeping it commercial with the non-disclosure agreement was the really big stumbling block.
Gotcha. Yeah. I guess actually, like, unless maybe at the risk of like just like dominating the questioning, but yeah, you kind of mentioned like the in your model you envision more of a direct democracy.
Yeah, for people's side, yeah.
So how to what extent do you envision political parties in this?
That's not up to us to decide, I think.
Okay.
I can
That's a
imagine that
great
there
answer.
could be.
It's like, okay, it's like, not,
Yeah,
not,
well,
not
when
bad.
it comes to the people side, we want to. It's like, I think this is like a skeleton. We concentrate more on the technical side that builds up the skeleton that then we attach the communities to. But we
Okay.
want then the communities to run themselves how they want to run things. So if they want political parties, that's fine with us. If they don't, that's also fine with us. We want it to be as broad and as accepting of different things as much as possible. I know we can't accept everything. We can't have groups who want to go around exterminating everybody else. I mean, you have to have a certain degree of tolerance, even if you don't like everybody else. We still have to tolerate and work with them. But we would like it to be the communities themselves to decide. So this is one of the. Often we're accused of being very fascist, with this thing. But we want communities to work out themselves how they want to rule things and how they do things. So I think so we're as far away from being fascist as we possibly can, I think. But yeah, so
Okay.
it's not a decision for us.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Okay. Oh, actually, I could say something else though. That was talking about political parties within this system, if we could ever build this type of system. But how do we get to this system? And I still think we need some political involvement and either work with political parties, in political parties, or form our own political parties. But I am in a very tiny, small minority on that opinion. I did actually work a little bit to try and see if we could set up a party that would be interested in doing this, that could promote this sort of ideas and maybe even get elected to do this. But there's so very, very, very little interest in doing it. I got a few people sort of interested to join a group on Facebook, but nobody was really interested in interacting and nobody was really interested in doing anything. So my experience, at least people who are interested in this type of thing are not interested in doing anything politically. But I still feel to myself that if this is actually going to be a reality, we're going to actually move towards this type of sustainable thing, we're going to need some political involvement somewhere along the line, and we can't avoid it. So it would be nice if we could get a political party together that would actually start getting elected and actually start forming this. But getting people to do that is difficult.
Right.
Or maybe I'm just the wrong person to organize that.
Well, as you notice, like no one person can do everything, right?
No, well, I'm not a people sort of person. So I've been working quite a lot with the design and things like that and put those ideas. But any people success we've had is really down to Enrique. Enrique is one of the guys we got in EOS, and he's the one who's been really getting people together. He's the one who got the people together to get the biodome working, got the people together to do this community stuff there. So he's the people side than I am. I'm just not a people person. So
okay.
Andrew, I have a question. So how big of a territory or of economy do you need to get this started with?
We have a stepping stone phase plan. So a community of 10, 15 people would be enough to start. And that would be a stepping stone. Because we talked about having to have money. And we actually have what we call a proto-technique idea. And that has money in it as part of it. But the more we build onto it, the less and less we depend on the money until we reach a certain phase where we can actually be self-sustaining without having to have a money economy. So a small one, we could maybe 10, 15 people if we can get a community running like that, and then another community, and then another community, and then start getting that building up that way. So yeah, so we could start quite small.
So these would be within existing nation states, at least at the beginning.
Yeah, definitely within that to start. We talk about people like us want us to be revolutionary and want to overthrow governments and things, which is also something we don't want to do. We talk about an evolutionary approach, that we start small and then we gradually work our way towards something. But the other thing also, what we want is something to actually point to and say, look, it works. You know, we can convince people better, I think, if we can actually show them something than actually trying to convince them with arguments. So we say, look, we got a sustainable system. We can actually give you a good standard of living in this type of system and sustainably without destroying the planet and stuff. Just look at it, there it is. And I hope that will convince more people. More we get, the better things will be, more sustainable things will be, more sustainable, self-supporting it becomes, until we actually get to a state where we need no money. Exactly when do we reach that stage? I do not know. But we definitely can start small. The plan is called stepping stones, to try and work that out with a proto-technique as the way forward.
governments also tend not to like it when you start talking revolution. That tends to get you on lists.
Yeah. Well, we are not revolutionary. We have no intention of overthrowing government, but we do have intention of proposing an alternative system that we hope other people will want to take on. So,
I mean, arguably, if one has a powerful enough political party, one wouldn't have to overthrow the government. One would just enact this through existing channels or change it to the legal structure. But I know that I had another question too. Talk about kind of the social science part of this. And this is one deficiency I had with the Venus Project, in that they took a lot of their energy accounting stuff from the old Technocracy Inc. organization. The beautiful physical design work, they can create beautiful buildings, things like that, just absolutely gorgeous, almost transcend you to a higher level. But their social science stuff, their main principle seems that everything's learned. And that's pretty much it. How does EOS go further with the social science side of things?
Well, I think Jack Fresco was very much B.F. Skinner sort of ilk, very much extreme on that. Everything was the environment. You just build an environment and people will be naturally fit into that. We are not quite that extreme. I think there is some evidence to say that if you build certain environments, you will get certain behaviors, but you can't manipulate and control people that sort of way, really. So we are sort of realize that there is a genetic component to it, but there is also an environment component to it, and we have some control over that environment aspect. But we're not going to be, I wouldn't go so far as Jack Fresco goes and say that it's beyond poverty, war and crime or whatever. I still feel there could be wars, there still could be crime within this system. I would argue that we'll probably see is less of, we can minimize it down, but I wouldn't say go so far as to guarantee that we would have no war, no crime or anything like that. So we're not as extreme as the Venus Project in that sense.
That's an interesting point. I did have another question, and it's kind of playing off of Mark's previous question a little bit, but it's also a little bit different. It's like, I can't help but also think about, since like the 19th century, about like some of these other movements that have attempted to create, different kind of, like utopian models. In England, France, a little bit in the US. You can also lump in Israel too with their communities. Invariably, and also actually you can even go back to the 60s and like some of like the sort of the hippie communes that got established. So I don't know, do you find anything interesting, any lessons learned from like some of these other historical ventures?
Yeah, I actually got a book somewhere on different types of utopias. There it is, actually. I could just see it now in my bookcase. That some of them fail, some of them succeed. I think the thing is they have nice ideologies and things that sound pretty on paper, but you don't really know, does this actually really work? Reality is a harsh mistress, and you have to just do what she says. So, but just because you've got a nice idea and it sounds good and people think, yes, that will work, and you put it to test, it doesn't necessarily going to mean it's going to work. So what I see from a lot of these utopias, because I've got that utopia book actually goes back hundreds of years with different utopias, is they have the ideas and they start building, but they've never really tested them out to know whether or not they actually work. So some of them succeed to a degree, or they end up having to morph and change away from the original ideas in order to stay alive. I'm trying to think of the one in America now. It's not Twin Oaks. Are you familiar with Twin Oaks?
Maybe. I'm also trying to remember some names here too, but it's
Twin Oaks is I read quite a bit up on, studied that one quite a bit, and they went from I think the book was called Walden 2 or something was the book where they took the idea. So the founders took that book, and that was the founding ideology, and that was what they built the community on. But if you look at what happened over time, was that became a relic. It just disappeared in the background, and the community changed, adapted to things that actually worked. So what we would like to do, and another factor with the prototype technique and why we want to build up small communities to start with, is we need to test this out. Because it sounds good on paper, and I can see how this could work in reality, but that doesn't mean to say it will work in reality. We could have it completely wrong. And certainly couldn't take it to a government and say, oh, this is a pretty idea, let's change the whole social economic system of the state to this sustainable world, because we don't know if it will work. So what I get out of all this studying of utopias is test before you actually start building things up. And we would really like to build things up virtually and everything. It was part of what they've been doing with the community we've got to the north here. One of the things I told them to do was actually build a model and work through and see what would you actually do on a day-to-day basis in this community. How would it work day to day? And you've got the model there, will give you something physical to work and re-interact with. So test out the ideas and see, will it actually work? Could it work? And then we have these core ideas of trying to apply science and things to the way the communities work, but through testing, through building and stuff, we can need to be adaptable and flexible and adapt our ideas to try and get something that will actually work, still holding to those core values. So yeah, so what I get out of it, all those utopias, is test out your ideas before you start really building on large scale.
Yeah, I mean, and there's also like some other interesting aspects of when you think about the long-term development of communities, because one of the other things that happens, like for the communities that maybe like did last a little while, is like, oh, you have the next generation that, like they don't necessarily, like they actually move away, they go back to like, other cities. So how does this system perpetuate itself?
Yeah, and that comes down to education and understanding the need for why you want to do this and stuff. And that's a difficult thing, because even if you have generations within the same community, the community would change and divulge away from what was originally intended. And if we want to actually build up a test thing and a proto technique to test the ideas out, and we start finding that people put in new ideas and warp it and change it, well, there's nothing wrong. There may be nothing wrong with their ideas and stuff, but it means that we end up deviating away from the testing of our ideas. So we never fully test our ideas out. So it's trying to keep it, I hate to use the word pure, but I can't think of anything else at the moment. You have to keep it on track better. I know it would be better. Keep it on track with new people coming in. And it does, from experience, seem to be that this is a difficult thing for people to understand, this idea of experts making decisions about dividing society on the people's and technological society and stuff. Because the things they tend to want to do is they want to make it democratic, and they vote any idiot to govern. They say, well, isn't that what we're doing now? Isn't that why we're in a mess now? So trying to keep it on track is going to be tricky, I think.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions? Comments?
I have a question, actually.
Sure.
Mark, you said that you're recording this. I just wondered, where would the recording be? You were sending an email around with where to find it and stuff?
Yes, it's being recorded in the cloud at San Francisco State University. I'm going to download and do a little bit of editing, usually at the beginning and the end, and then post it online at San Francisco State. And if there's trouble accessing that for people, YouTube.
Yeah. If you send us a link around, would you?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm a little bit behind on that. I apologize. So
yeah, cheers. So that'd be good.
Let's see. I do have a question. Have you talked with like behavioral psychologists? For instance, when you limit people how much energy they can use, they're going to have a reaction to that. People don't like limits.
Yeah, we hope the idea is that we will have the capacity to produce things so that people won't feel limited. In other words, they won't be able to use their maximum capacity out. But then it comes down to behaviors in society. I mean, you don't want people just buying, or as it were, allocating production to one thing over and over and over and over and over again. And you say, well, yeah, a computer, another computer, another computer, another computer. And they say, if you're going to get that sort of behavior, and then they max out, producing loads of things they don't actually need. So that's another aspect that we sort of, that's part of the environmental design, that you should design it so that people won't actually want to do that sort of thing, or don't do that sort of thing. But how do you handle it if they do that sort of thing? These are all questions we want to look at in more detail, as part of the reason why we need to actually experiment and test things and stuff. Another behavioral aspect that needs to be sort of looked at is, if you give everybody everything what they need, what happened to those people? Do they? Well, we had experiments with animals. I remember one where they did rats, where they gave them everything they need and stuff. They became sex obsessed, basically. Produced loads and loads and loads and more rats and more rats, and it started to eventually the system couldn't cope anymore, and then they ended up fighting and killing each other. Could we end up in that type of situation as well with humans? Would that work if we give them everything they need? Will we start feeling? Will we have a population boom? I don't know. But these sort of behavioural things is something that really needs to be looked at a lot more detailed and experimented with more as well. But this comes into this environmental design to try and we design the society in such a way that hopefully people won't behave in ways that are detrimental to the society, I hope. And what do we do if they do? That sort of stuff. So those are questions that need to be looked at and answered.
Okay, let's see, some people have to leave at 10. We can keep the conversation going after that. Meanwhile, I just want to thank Andrew, have people want to unmute, give him a round of applause.
Thank you.
So thank you. And appreciate you coming and speaking with us. The recording will be posted and links to it will be sent out on the regular email. However you found out about this meeting, you'll find out about the links to the videos. Again, Andrew, thank you. And
Thank you.
I will stick around if there are any other questions, as long as Andrew wants to stick around.
Yeah, well, I can stick around for another 5-10 minutes or so, I suppose.
So I'm actually going to bail out, but it was really great chatting with you. Thanks, Mark, for organizing this too.
Right. Yeah.
And,
thank you. Nice talking to you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
I look forward to whatever the next thing you organize here, Mark.
Sounds big interesting.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, recording back on.
Good.
Do any of our participants have any comments or questions?
I actually have a comment, and I think what Andrew was saying, I'm Charmy and from Technocracy Inc. And the premises, what you talk about is exactly what Technocracy is going for, but we have just basically come down to we're archiving.
All right.
And
if you noticed, if you
Wonderful.
notice, some of the ideas were stolen from Technocracy that we had in the presentation I gave, especially like the goal there.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Anything that can spread the ideas, because that's what was Technocracy is all about, is the educating people, not the creating part.
Yeah, I actually started thinking about these ideas in the early 90s, and I was still having was a free market capitalist based system I had during the 90s, and it wasn't until about 2004 I discovered Technocracy Inc. About the end of the 1990s, I sort of more and more realized that a free market economy would not work. It wouldn't produce a sustainable society. So I sort of put these ideas on the back burner until 2004 when I found out about Technocracy Incorporated, and I found their energy accounting system and everything, and I thought, oh, this is it. This is what we need. This is what I want. So I threw those ideas into my ideas as well. So I did actually steal quite a bit from Technocracy Inc. Not everything. Yeah. Not everything's the same, but certainly the energy accounting bit was stolen. And
you gave them credit. You gave them credit. So
yeah. So that's some good stuff.
I'm not even worried about credit. I just think it's wonderful that the ideas, because the idea is what's important. I like your idea of the evolutionary process to it. It will get there.
Yeah, but the more people we get, the better and better it will get as well. So it's trying to get more people in and more people that understand this as well. Because the experience so far we've had is that people find it difficult to understand it. They come a lot with preconceived ideas. And trying to get to understand that this is something different, that we don't want to do it that way, that everybody else does, seems to be a bit of a difficult hurdle to get over.
Yes. Where are you located, Andrew?
Yeah, I'm in Umeå, which is in the north of Sweden.
Oh, okay.
It's about 4 hours drive from the Arctic Circle.
Whoa.
to the south of the Arctic Circle. So we're on the right side, so we get some sunlight in the winter.
Oops, sorry. All right, thank you. That was my contribution.
Right, thank you.